Just a quick disclaimer, I wrote this with the idea that whoever is hearing me read the script has already watched Yu-Gi-Oh! And knows what the hell I'm talking about. So if you get a little lost because I'm not properly explaining things, I'm sorry. Just a heads up. Yu-Gi-Oh!, specifically the 4Kids dub, was a big part of my childhood, as I've previously mentioned on my channel before. And I have a lot of love in my heart for the majority of the main cast of characters. For some reason though, there's been this one character that I sorta latched onto, and she's been my favorite ever since. A lot of my online profile pictures are of this character. Ever since, like, 5th grade, she's been my Minecraft skin. And that character is Ishizu Ishtar. To this day, I'm still not sure what made me attach myself to this character so fiercely, other than the fact that I think future predicting abilities are awesome. And when I saw her duel with Kaiba for the first time, I was really disappointed she lost. Yeah, she was kind of cheating, but she's my favorite character, so shut up. The bigger Battle City upset that most people remember is Joey versus Merrick, and how Joey would have won if Merrick hadn't made it a shadow game. And I agree, it's kind of bull. But I've seen a fair amount of people cover what they think the Battle City arc would have been like if Joey'd won. So I decided to make a different scenario. What if Ishizu won her duel with Kaiba? All the events of Battle City would transpire just as they had originally. The Battle City finalists were Bakura, Joey, Yugi, Kaiba, Merrick, Odeon, Mai, and Ishizu. Yami and Yugi defeat Yami Bakura, Joey wins his duel with Odeon by default, and Mai's put into a coma by Yami Merrick. The changes start when we get to the last duel of the quarterfinals, Seto Kaiba versus Ishizu Ishtar. In their duel, Kaiba plays right into Ishizu's hands, as she perfectly counters every move he makes with her knowledge of the future. When the time comes, Kaiba isn't given a Deus Ex Machina vision of the Blue Eyes White Dragon. He does exactly what Ishizu predicted, and uses his God card to attack Ishizu's life points directly. That activates Ishizu's trap, Sacrifice's Blast. Kaiba's life points are reduced to 0. Yugi and his friends stare in awe. Did Ishizu really just defeat Seto Kaiba, one of the top-ranked duelists in the world? And she'd done it so calmly and effortlessly. Joey is getting a massive kick out of it. Guess you're not so tough after all, huh, Kaiba? Kaiba's speechless. He'd walked right into her trap and hadn't noticed. He was too blinded by his arrogance to even consider a strategy like that. And since he'd lost the duel, he'd have to give her back the obelisk she entrusted to him. He could have disqualified her for cheating, as she was using the Millennium Necklace, but he'd already set a precedent by not disqualifying Yami Merrick for his use of the Millennium Rod.
You played excellently, Kaiba. Had it been any other opponent, you would have likely won. But I have a mission to fulfill. I'll be taking my obelisk back now.
Kaiba just shoves it in her hands and walks off. His dream of getting all 3 god cards was shattered. He had no reason not to continue his research on the Winged Dragon of Ra's text, though, even if he'd seemingly never get to use the card himself. He went back to the computer room where Mokuba was. Mokuba encouraged his brother and suggested that if Yugi got all 3 god cards, he could just duel Yugi for them. Kaiba could probably convince Yugi to duel him without using the god cards, so it'd be an even match. Kaiba promised himself that he'd do exactly that. At least I don't have to deal with any more of this magical nonsense. Pegasus, Yugi, Merrick, and Ishizu all lean on their little mystical items because they're too weak to fight on their own. As before, Ishizu tells Yugi the details of her past and the story of her brother. She doesn't, however, give him her necklace. After all, it's clearly still working, so she has no reason to give it up. Unbeknownst to the rest of the gang, Yami Merrick duels Bakura and the real Merrick, and Bakura loses. Then, as the blimp is headed on its way to Kaiba Corp Island, they're suddenly thrown off course. Well, Ishizu, what's that magic necklace of yours say now?
I don't know for sure, but I sense great danger ahead.
Ishizu does not see a future in which Odeon, Mai, Serenity, or Kaiba's employees come to any harm by Yami Merrick if they remain on the blimp. Still, Tristan stays behind to keep Serenity safe, just in case anything goes wrong. In order to impress Serenity, Duke goes with the others, bravely rushing into danger.
Wow, Duke, you're so brave.
Give me a break. The group that goes into the virtual world is slightly smaller than before. Mokuba and Seto Kaiba, Yugi, Taya, Joey, and Duke all still go, but Tristan and Serenity are replaced by Ishizu. Ishizu is put in the same location as Duke, just like Tristan originally was. They're trapped in a castle with infinite passageways with seemingly no exits. So, Magic Lady, how do you predict we find a way out of this?
I don't. We are in a virtual world designed by those who wish to keep us trapped here. They control the layout. If they never want us to find an exit, they can simply remove all exits.
Duke sees an axe being held by a suit of armor and gets an idea. He suggests they break through the walls. Working together, they manage to escape the castle and emerge in a wide field. Ishizu hadn't predicted this, which is her first hint that the Millennium Necklace's predictions aren't as perfect as she thought. She writes it off as an effect of being in the virtual world. As it's capable of changing to fit Noah's needs, fate can be circumvented. A door appears in the middle of the vast field that Duke and Ishizu had made their way to. Both being fairly reasonable people, they choose not to open it. But every time they walk past the door, it appears ahead of them again. The two have no choice but to go in, lest they walk past the same door for all eternity. Inside the door, they are greeted by Nesbit in his robotic knight form. He challenges them both to a duel, hoping to win not one, but 2 bodies for the Big Five. Duke and Ishizu choose their decks. Duke uses the same deck we see in the original episode, and Ishizu chooses to replicate her own deck, with a few minor changes. She's no longer facing Kaiba, so some alteration was required. Even if Duke is more experienced than, say, Serenity and Tristan, he's the weaker of the 2 duelists here. Nesbit focuses his attack on Duke. He's not as bad as Serenity, so he doesn't leave himself open for attack. Ishizu can predict Nesbit's moves, and manages to keep herself in the game. Nesbit's rule that duelists can't help each other prevents Ishizu from telling Duke about the visions she's seeing from her necklace. Since Ishizu and Duke aren't fully on the same page, they have trouble working together. And since Duke's moves may accidentally counteract Ishizu's, she can't make a flawless strategy. Duke puts up a good fight, but Nesbit brings Duke's life points down to 0. He falls through the floor just as Joey, Taya, and Yugi arrive. With Duke gone, and with Nesbit having been put more on the back foot than in his original duel with Serenity and Tristan there, Ishizu wins the game. She's then overcome with feelings of guilt.
I'm so sorry. It is my fault that your friend is gone. I was so caught up in countering Nesbit's moves. If I had focused on working in tandem with Duke, he may have still been here.
A lot of the rest of the virtual world arc remains the same, only with the Big Five using Duke's body instead of Tristan's. Duke also gets to be a little robot monkey. Kaiba also has a little bit of a difference. His ego was a little injured from his loss to Ishizu, so some of Noah's mind games are a little more effective on him. He and Mokuba really lean on each other during their time in the virtual world. Beating Lecter helped boost Kaiba's ego a bit more. Joey and Yugi are willing to let Ishizu join them in the fight against the Big Five, but she declines. She knows they can win without her, and she worries that she'll bring them down. After all, it was her lack of teamwork that put poor Duke Devlin in this situation in the first place. When Kaiba faces Noah, he battles even harder than he did before. It actually makes Yugi's duel with Noah a little easier, since he manages to chip off more life points. I'm done with your little games, Noah. I don't care what you have to say, and I don't care that I was booted out of my own tournament. And do you know why? Because no matter what happens, I'm still Seto Kaiba, and I will regain my rightful place as the world's top duelist. Noah still bullshits his way into beating Kaiba and turning him into stone, though. When Kaiba defeats Gozaburo, he's back to his old self. Maybe a touch more humble, but he'd never admit it. The arc ends the same way as before. Everyone escapes the virtual world, returns to the blimp, and they all finally make it to Kaiba Corp Island. Fortunately, Tristan and Serenity hadn't come to harm while watching over Odeon and Mai. Yami Merrick wasn't really interested in those two. He'd popped in to scare them a few times, but that was about it. He would save the real danger for his duel with the Pharaoh. The 4-way duel between Ishizu, Yugi, Joey, and Yami Merrick is held. Ishizu's goal is to face Merrick herself and try to free her brother. Yugi and Joey, though, share the same goal of wanting Joey to duel Merrick. Joey for revenge, and Yugi for the sake of winning Ishizu's God card. Ishizu's on track to getting what she wants, but something happens. She finds that she can't keep up with the 3 other duelists. She could predict one duelist's moves at a time, but all 3? There were too many possibilities. The Millennium Necklace couldn't keep up with them. Taken by surprise, Ishizu can't prevent Joey and Yugi from enacting their plan to put Joey up against Merrick. The duel between Joey and Yami Merrick plays out as it did originally. Joey loses because of shadow game reasons, which is bullcrap, but the plot demands we set it up so Yugi and Merrick face in the final round. Speaking of which, up next is the duel between Ishizu and Yugi. To Ishizu, both outcomes are acceptable. If she wins, she can face Merrick herself and save her brother. If Yugi wins, then the destined duel will take place, and she knows in her heart that the Pharaoh will triumph.
I have complete and utter faith in you, my Pharaoh. If you win this duel, you will have all you need to save my brother. But don't think that I won't give you all I have.
The Millennium Necklace has been proving less and less reliable. She uses it in this duel, but far more sparingly. The duel is fierce, and it almost looks like Ishizu may even win. But Yugi and Yami realize that the biggest flaw in the visions of the Millennium Necklace is its inability to predict multiple outcomes. Yes, it can predict the moves of a single duelist, but not two or more. The two bring back a technique they hadn't used since facing Pegasus: the Mind Shuffle. This would effectively make it that Ishizu would be facing two duelists at once. Unable to cope with this strategy, Ishizu loses the duel. Kaiba, who'd been watching from afar, was pleased with this outcome. Ishizu smiles and takes the defeat in stride. She gives Yugi her necklace, as she doesn't need it anymore. She also gives him Obelisk, which she said was rightfully his in the first place. The duel between Joey and Kaiba for the bronze medal doesn't happen, even if Joey still recovers like normal. Kaiba demands a rematch with Ishizu. Ishizu accepts, and for the first time since the tournament began, she's dueling without the use of the Millennium Necklace. With encouragement from Yugi's friends, she slowly learns to trust her own instincts as a duelist instead of relying on her visions of the future. Joey brings up Mai, and how she once relied on cheap tricks, but learned that all she needed was to be confident in her own abilities. Inspired, she fends for herself against Kaiba. Just like Joey, though, Ishizu loses.
It's just like I thought. The only reason you won was through your so-called magic. I am the superior duelist, and don't any of you forget it. And as for those god cards, when this is all over, I'll duel Yugi for them and take my rightful place as king of games.
And that's about it for the changes to the timeline this What If brings about. The rest of the arc and then the show remains basically the same. As for the duel Kaiba wants with Yugi, I'd say it's a pretty good motivation for his duel in Pyramid of Light. Just saying. I hope you liked this video. I know it's not usually what I post on this channel, but I figured I'd branch out and have fun. Thanks for watching.